What is up, everybody? I hope you're all having a very highly successful day. My name is John Knott from growingau.com, and you're listening to day 12 of the 365-day podcasting experiment on the All About How podcast, where we are posting a podcast every single day for a year to answer the question, does more content equal more followers? Going pretty well so far. Hard to believe that we're already coming up here on 2 weeks. I am pretty excited to get to that 14-day mark. I think on the 14th day, which is going to be 2 days from now on Saturday, we're just going to take some time and talk about the results over 2 weeks and talk about my thoughts, look at some analytics, and get kind of an idea for what it's looking like at 2 weeks. 2 weeks, rather. And then we'll take a look at what it looks like in a month and then go on every month from there. Really excited for that. Glad you're all listening and here today on day 12. Really appreciate it. We have a nice episode for you today. I'm maybe cheating a little bit, but I think that's up for interpretation. What we're going to do today is we are going to pull an excerpt from another podcast that I started over on my other YouTube channel, 2 Leaks. That's 2 Leeks, and it's the number 2. No space in between if you want to look us up. That's 2 Leeks. It's a cooking channel I do with a friend of mine and my sister. We're having a great time over there making some food. We're talking about food, and that's what we're going to be posting on here today, is we're going to be posting a little excerpt from our podcast called Sizzlecast, where we talk about awesome food, awesome restaurants, the culture, the people, and the places that bring some of the best food on the planet together. The first episode was centered in Key West, Florida. We're talking about our time there, our experiences there, and some of the great food that we had. And I'm going to be playing a little excerpt from that podcast in here today so you can get an idea for that. And maybe that's something you want to go check out and listen to. And if you want to do that, it's going to be on all your podcasting platforms as well as YouTube. So you can go check us out on YouTube at 2 Leeks, as well as on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to get more information on that, that's the places to do so. So everybody sit back, relax, enjoy a nice little excerpt from 2 Leaks Sizzlecast. Thanks for listening, guys. This is all about how.
It's all about how in 2020 we're going to leave the world a better place than we found it.
It is
and
light.
Fresh, and it's just amazing. I'm like, my mouth is watering right now as we talk about it.
Well, I want to go back and talk about something that you had mentioned earlier about how we had found a lot of these restaurants on Triple D, and how that really helped us the first time we went to Key West find the places to eat. Because if you're going somewhere, you don't know when you're going back, it does help to have the recommendation.
Yes.
But then I would say the second time is when we've really started to expand upon that kind of external recommendation and just started to take the word and advice of people who are around.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just going to say. Use Triple D as your base. So you
or
have
any
an
site,
idea,
whatever it is you use
of where you're, where you're going to go when you get down there, because you don't want to be clueless. But I feel like the best way to find the best spots in any area is just talk to people, like people on the street that you bump into for whatever reason, and just say, hey, where do you like to eat around here? I'm not from here. And they'll tell you, and they get really excited about it.
We went to a cigar shop, and the guy who was selling the cigars, really friendly person, clearly been doing this a long time. And we were just talking to him, one about the island, about business, about fishing, and then also about food. And, he recommended a couple of places. I think Sloppy Joe's was one of them, and we're going to talk about that. I know that the tour guide at the Ernest Hemingway House recommended Sloppy Joe's.
Yes.
They talked about it. And honestly, every tour that you go on tends to talk about Sloppy Joe's and how it changed locations and how influential that place was in Ernest Hemingway's life. There's a lot of that culture down there. It's a heavy literary culture, which I think warrants a little bit of talking about, is the literary culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the early 20th century, we're talking around like the roaring 20s there was this lost generation of writers that kind of abandoned traditional American society and what was the status quo, which was living in the lap of luxury, and
Oz was brought on by World War I.
It was really a rejection of the way that society was going, which was probably smart because then we saw what happened in the 30s.
Well, it makes sense though, but think about it, because you are brought up in this world. So let's talk about the people who are affected by this last generation. We're talking pretty much anyone from the ages of probably 18 to, I would say, probably 29, if not, a little bit more on either end. So you have these people who are raised through the late 1800s into the very early 1900s. All of a sudden, come 1917, you have the U.S. entering World War I. We see mass catastrophe, death, and destruction on a scale that we had not thought possible before, or that the modern world hadn't seen. It would make sense that entire generation of people, all these men and women that served in different ways throughout the war, would all of a sudden come back and be completely kind of screw it with the way that I've been told to do it. Because I've watched my friends get mowed down by machine guns on, the front lines of France.
A lot of it was anger too, because they saw these people when they came back in the 20s just being very, very reckless and careless, and like the stereotypical 20s life. And obviously, we really don't know much of what that was like, but like what you see in media and in books and in writing about the 20s, they saw this, and it angered them because they fought so hard, and they lived in such a terrible, terrible life for so long because of the war, and then people are being so reckless. So they completely removed themselves from that society. And a lot of these people, like Ernest Hemingway, went to Key West, and they found their lives in Key West and in isolation. And that's where he did a lot of his writing.
Well, you had that exodus to places like France, Paris specifically. Then you had them coming back to the United States after that journey abroad. And then, you had them settling in places like, a lot of them New York, but also, you had Tennessee Williams in Key West. You had Ernest Hemingway in Key West. You had...
Robert Frost was there
Robert
for a
Frost
while.
was there
Nobody
for
really
a while.
knows about that.
No, but he was there. And the crazy part is you had these three literary giants of American culture within 3 blocks of each other.
Yeah.
Like, all just around. So, we talk about these literary giants that are just... like literally within I would say, mile radius of each other. Yeah, thank you. Mile radius of each other in Key West, who all have experienced hardship, horror that is unimaginable, now producing some of the greatest literature of all time. We talk about the lost generation. Ernest Hemingway wrote a poem. I want to read it here. It's called The Age Demanded. And the poem is, "The age demanded that we sing and cut away our tongue. The age demanded that we flow and hammered in the bung. The age demanded that we dance and jammed us in iron pants. And in the end, the age was handed the sort of shit that it demanded." So I think that in itself encapsulates everything that was the lost generation.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's just interesting to me, the amount of culture in this place.
The amount of history.
Right, and how that history and culture does seep into the food.
Yes. When you go to Sloppy Joe's specifically, you're getting all of the food that was there when they originally established the location, which was, again, early 20th century. That's where the Sloppy Joe was originated from, right?
Yeah, and it really grew in popularity. Now, the place moved. It was just across the street.
Yeah, they moved to a bigger location. Yeah. You could see the original place.
The original place,
looks like a log cabin.
The original place, it does, and I think it still bears was Sloppy Joe's.
Yes.
But the actual restaurant itself, that still bears not only the name but the essence of the place, is now across the street, which I found that to be a little weird because they talk about, this is the place Ernest Hemingway hung out, but it's not. That place
it is,
but it isn't. It's weird.
Yeah, it has a lot of Ernest Hemingway paraphernalia, a lot of his fishing gear. He really liked to fish, I guess. And it's set up in the same way as the original place was. So if you walk into the original Sloppy Joe's, which is still a bar,
it's still, you can still eat there.
They look very, very similar, and they made the place to look like how it probably would have when Ernest Hemingway frequented the joint.
Now, this place was jammed. This is not like the other two restaurants. This is a large space.
Yes, the atmosphere of this place was, I think, maybe my favorite part. Now, it's what they market themselves on is they always have music playing. There's always a live musician in this restaurant. We went there one of the first nights that we were there, and there was just a cover band. They were just taking song requests and playing them. I'm sure they had iPads on their stands. They were looking up the chord progressions of all the songs, and it was awesome. I mean, they went from Boston to Johnny Cash to Led Zeppelin, and they were phenomenal. And then I went, just my mom and I went, it was the last day that we were there, we went for lunch. And there was a solo guy doing a thing in there, and he was also incredible. So that's one of the best parts about the place, is that there's so much music and there's so much fun going on.
Well, again, it comes back to that art and that culture that has ingrained itself into the society and essence of Key West. Because the other thing is, This music isn't some background music, live singing and all that kind of stuff.
No. This is the main event.
I mean, the audience was engaged.
Yes.
Like, they were singing along, they were clapping, they were loud, they were rowdy, and it was a good time.
It was a good time. This is not like your upscale 5-star experience. Basically, if you're going to Key West, don't be expecting like a super fancy, you're going to get dressed up kind of meal. This is not that place.
No.
There are many other places in the country and in the world where you can go and get that kind of experience, but this is not what you're going to get in Key West. This is island time, laid back feel.
It is.
And people are going to talk to you and they might give you a hard time. That's the fun of it.
Right. And this is the kind of place where it's time to get down and dirty with culture.
Yes.
Like, and I'm going to say it one more time. I mean, Key West is the type of place where it's time to get down and dirty with culture. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is what makes everything about it work. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you have this good food that's fit into a good culture. Because if you just had a good culture and bad food, it would be weird.
Yeah.
But if you just had really good food and no culture, it also wouldn't fit. But when you put it all together, it's what creates this magical experience that isn't contained on this really small island.
Yeah, and that's why people love it there so much. Because, I mean, if you think about it, the location itself is not ideal. Everything is cramped. It is extremely hot. Like, you can't even be out in the afternoons, especially in the summer, because the humidity is so bad. But yet people love this place and are drawn to this place. And even, when they retire, we know a lot of people who have retired and moved to Key West because they love it. And it's because of the culture and the food and the people. That's really what makes this place iconic.
Well, and talk about the romanticism that's involved with it, that you are literally going as far to the edge as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. Now, we know it's not actually the edge, but as far as the United States is concerned, it's the southernmost point on our continental nation, and that's as far as you can go. You're literally driving right to the edge of society, right to the edge of what we would say is the habitated, I would say, let's call it the domesticated world, mm-hmm. which is all that's beyond that is 90 miles of sea to Cuba.
Yeah.
So you're literally driving to the edge of society to have some of the best cultural experiences, have some of the most real food experiences that the world can provide. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you found that to be entertaining. And if you did, there's a 45-minute episode waiting for you over there on 2 Leagues. So wherever you listen to your podcast, you can check us out over there. I was very proud of it. I'm excited to keep doing those. Those are going to air every week on Wednesdays. So if you are interested in keeping up to date with that, it's going to be a Wednesday podcast airing at 2 p.m. on all your podcasting platforms and on YouTube as well. Super excited to be sharing that with you guys and talking about some awesome food. All right, so that's going to pretty much wrap it up for today's episode, Day 12. Hope you really enjoyed. We're going to join you back here tomorrow on Day 13 for another awesome value-packed episode. Let's jump into that fact of the day really quickly. So today's fact of the day is a little bit different than normal. It's actually going to be a quote that I read yesterday in a book called Let My People Go Surfing about the starting and running of the company Patagonia. We're going to be doing a breakdown of that book here very shortly. And I want to read a quote from the book that was used. I thought it was pretty cool, and I think it kind of fits well into the nature of our podcast and also our fact of the day. So the quote goes like this. There are two types of creativity. The creativity of making 0 to 1 and the creativity of making 1 to 1,000. And that is a quote by a Japanese businessman named Kazuhito Naishi. I do apologize for pronouncing that wrong, but spelling it in case you want to look it up, it's Kazuhikonishi for anyone interested in looking that up. That is how you spell it. And again, he is like a very popular businessman in the Japanese world, and I felt that quote was really, really appropriate for this show. And now we got phones going off in the studio, so best we wrap it up. But remember the difference of the creativity of making 0 to 1 and the creativity of making 1 to 1,000. Both equally important, both requiring a very different set of skills. So we're going to leave it there today. You guys can kind of think about that. And we will join you back here tomorrow with Day 13. This has been the All About How podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Let's remember to leave the world a better place than we found it. Have a very highly successful rest of your day. And we will catch you here tomorrow.